Upon arriving at the Magic Academy, the protagonist was approached by a professor who seemed to have already been waiting for him. Not understanding the reason for being called, he moved closer to find out what the instructor wanted, beginning a new conversation that could influence his next steps at the academy. During the conversation, the professor praised the protagonist's unusual abilities and pointed out that his support and restoration magic already surpassed that of many more experienced students at the academy. Impressed by his talent, he stated that his admission into the institution represented a great achievement, and then invited the young man to participate in practical training involving restoration magic. Although he accepted the invitation, the protagonist had the feeling that this proposal could end up becoming more complicated than it seemed. After politely refusing the invitation, the protagonist explained that he needed to return home since his father was waiting for him. The professor understood the situation and, remembering the young man's respected family, acknowledged that he carried great expectations on his shoulders. Relieved to end the conversation, the protagonist left the place thinking only about going home, satisfied that he did not need to prolong that unexpected commitment. While walking through the city, the protagonist reflected on his new life and recalled that he had been reborn in that world, believing that his experience from his previous life would make everything easier. However, as time passed, he realized that much of the knowledge he considered exclusive already existed in that world. As the son of an influential merchant family and carrying the memories of someone who had died from overwork, he concluded that his greatest desire now was to live peacefully and avoid repeating the same mistakes from the past. While reflecting on his situation, the protagonist recognized that his inability to use offensive magic was compensated for by an exceptional talent for support and restoration magic. Even so, he knew that society mainly valued combat power, making it unlikely for him to pursue a political career. Since he was now part of a wealthy merchant family, he decided to abandon the idea of living only for work and take advantage of the opportunity to build a quieter life in that new world. While walking through the city, the protagonist reflected on the future he wanted to build. His greatest dream was to live peacefully, enjoying performances and avoiding an exhausting routine. To turn this goal into reality, he had a new business idea: to use his family's influence and resources to invest in a large theater, believing that this enterprise could guarantee both his livelihood and the lifestyle he had always wanted. While thinking about his new business plan, the protagonist was interrupted when he found two girls discussing a recipe and trying to remember a specific ingredient. Upon noticing his presence, they immediately recognized him and called out to him, beginning an unexpected encounter that could end up contributing to his new ideas. The protagonist met two acquaintances who had just finished their activities for the day. As they talked in a relaxed manner, they showed him what they had prepared and shared the results of their work. The reunion happened in a light and friendly atmosphere, strengthening the relationship between them and opening space for a new interaction. While talking with the two girls, the protagonist reflected on his financial situation. Although he earned a good monthly profit, he allocated a large portion of the money to expenses, financial reserves, and the well-being of his employees, guaranteeing them housing and all their necessities. Comparing these conditions with the reality of his previous life, he realized that his old work routine had been far more exhausting, which further reinforced his desire to build a calmer way of living. In a flashback from 1 year earlier, it was revealed how the protagonist put his plan into practice. With the goal of reducing his dependence on work as an adventurer, he decided to build a small business and reached an agreement with his father to finance the project using his own savings. At the same time, he arranged a simple place for his companions to live, meeting their basic needs while carefully organizing his expenses to turn his enterprise into reality. Seeking to put his plan into practice, the protagonist visited a slave merchant who was waiting to negotiate with him. Following his criteria, young low-cost slaves who were considered undesirable by the market were presented. Even facing their condition, the protagonist carefully analyzed the options, beginning a negotiation that would become part of his new enterprise. The protagonist explained that he intended to buy slaves with some physical defect because he could treat them with his healing magic, reducing the purchase costs and benefiting all parties involved. After concluding the negotiation and signing the magical contract, he chose a centaur girl with problems in her vision and in one of her legs. Even in the face of the doubts of the people around him, he showed confidence in his plan and stated that he would be able to take care of her. After examining the girl with detection magic, the protagonist discovered that her disability was caused by a serious spinal injury. Without wasting time, he began using his powerful restoration magic to treat the wound, starting the healing process and putting to the test the ability that made his plan possible. After completing the treatment, the protagonist asked the girl to try standing up. To her surprise, she managed to move her leg again, confirming that the cause of the injury had been eliminated. Although she still needed rehabilitation to fully recover her movements, the improvement was immediate. Moved and deeply grateful for having received a new chance, the centaur promised to do her very best from then on. After taking her to his home, the protagonist continued caring for the centaur girl's recovery. During the day, she trained her movements within her limits, and at night, she received new sessions of restoration magic to speed up her recovery. In addition to the treatment, he also cared about her food, hygiene, and well-being, ensuring that she had everything she needed. As the days passed, the relationship between the two became increasingly close, strengthening the trust and bond between them. With her recovery progressing, the protagonist took the centaur girl to a shop to look for an accessory capable of correcting her vision problem. The item was already ready after a period of preparation, representing another important step in her treatment. While they waited, he seated the girl comfortably and followed the final details, confident that her quality of life would improve even more from that point forward. At the shop, the protagonist discovered that the centaur girl's vision problem was a natural characteristic of her species, and therefore could not be corrected with restoration magic. To get around this limitation, he arranged a pair of glasses specially made for her. When she tried on the accessory and saw more clearly, the girl became radiant, while the merchant explained that future adjustments could be made whenever necessary. After putting on the glasses for the first time, the centaur girl was finally able to see the world clearly. Moved by the change in her vision, she could not hold back her tears and showed immense gratitude to the protagonist. Seeing her so happy, he became certain that all the effort dedicated to her recovery had been worth it. After recovering her health and her vision, the centaur girl began her journey as an adventurer. Before she left, the protagonist made sure she was properly equipped, gave her a letter of recommendation for the guild, and provided money for her initial expenses. Determined to repay all the help she had received, she promised to do her best, marking the beginning of the protagonist's plan to transform rejected slaves into adventurers capable of achieving their own independence. During her first mission as an adventurer, the centaur girl located her targets and demonstrated her combat abilities, beginning the journey that the protagonist had planned for her. After completing the mission, the centaur girl praised the equipment created by the protagonist and recognized that she owed her new life to him. As she continued her journey, her admiration and gratitude toward the one who had saved her grew even stronger. The girl remembered that, after being sold as a slave, she had believed she would die in a short time because of her serious health problems. However, everything changed when the protagonist bought her, began feeding her, treated her injuries with magic, and restored her wings to full condition. As she recalled these events, she realized how much her life had been transformed since she began living by his side. After fully recovering her wings, the girl began training flight every day, determined to fly freely once again. Although she fell and failed countless times, she never gave up. Whenever she got hurt, the protagonist used his magic to treat her, allowing her to continue training. Thanks to his constant support and her perseverance, she gradually recovered confidence in her own abilities. After much effort, the girl finally returned to flying freely and celebrated her achievement. When she returned happily to her companions, she was called to head to the guild, beginning another day of work as an adventurer. As time passed, the two girls began working alongside the protagonist and decided to support him in everything that was necessary. Grateful for the new lives they had received, they promised to repay his efforts and help sustain the business if he faced difficulties in the future. During a mission, the two girls were warmly received by the adventurers and thanked them for the help they had received earlier. After completing the work, they took the opportunity to talk with the townspeople, strengthening their bonds with the community and gaining even more experience as adventurers. By spending time with other adventurers, the girl realized that she had found a welcoming and cooperative environment. Inspired by the help she had received, she decided to repay it by supporting her companions with everything she could, believing that collaboration was essential for the success of any team. Reflecting on her new life, the girl realized how much she had changed since being saved by the protagonist. Once isolated and unable to live normally, she now had friends, helped other people, and no longer faced difficulties alone. Moved, she was comforted by her companion, reinforcing the strong bond she had built since then. Looking toward the future, the girl decided that she would remain in that city and continue growing alongside her companion. Grateful for everything she had received, she began dreaming of becoming stronger, helping other people, and serving as an example for those who also needed a second chance. About 6 months later, the protagonist's business continued growing thanks to the success of his adventurers. Despite the good results, he realized that the profits were still not enough to reach his great objective. Determined to expand his enterprise and increase his income, he returned to the slave merchant to recruit new members for his plan. While accompanying the protagonist to the slave merchant, the girl showed enthusiasm about meeting the next person who would become part of the group. As they discussed the results of the business, the merchant informed them that the preparations had already been completed, indicating that a new member was about to be introduced. Upon finding 3 new slaves, the protagonist decided to buy them immediately to expand his project. Even knowing that one of them was seriously ill, he maintained confidence in his powerful restoration magic, believing that he would be able to save her and offer all 3 of them a new opportunity in life. 3 weeks after rescuing the new slaves, the protagonist continued using his magic to treat and monitor their recovery. While one of the girls trained intensely to strengthen her body, she often ended up exhausting herself, but always received care before resuming her exercises, showing that all of them were gradually improving under his guidance. While monitoring the recovery of the new members, the protagonist evaluated each one's abilities. The former soldier stood out for her strength and endurance. The former adventurer showed great combat experience and ease in working with a team, while the former merchant apprentice had her life saved after he cured a serious problem in her internal organs. Satisfied with the results, he concluded that the 3 of them would be a great reinforcement for his project. After some time, the former merchant apprentice began receiving training to help with the protagonist's family business, and showed great talent for that kind of work. Satisfied with her progress, he realized that he could expand his project even further in the future, although the intense use of magic to care for all the girls was starting to leave him completely exhausted. During the training sessions, the protagonist demanded a lot from the new members, pushing some of them to their limits. Frightened by the intensity of the exercises, they even begged for rest. Realizing that the pace was excessive, he decided to reduce the frequency of the heaviest training sessions to allow proper recovery, while the group continued gradually evolving. With the success of his work, the protagonist became known for his willingness to help others. Shortly afterward, a representative from a charity institution came to ask for his cooperation, explaining that there was a shortage of qualified healers. Although he found it strange to receive yet another request of that kind, the protagonist listened to the proposal and considered the possibility of helping with one more case. While talking with the institution's representative, the protagonist was interrupted by the arrival of one of his companions, who drove the visitor away after believing that he was bothering her master. After the misunderstanding was cleared up, she was scolded for acting impulsively, while the protagonist tried to calm the situation. The protagonist realized that many people had begun to see him as a great philanthropist for investing in the recovery of slaves and transforming them into adventurers. His group already had 4 members and generated a considerable profit every month, even after deducting all costs. Even so, when comparing these results with his family's businesses, he concluded that he still had a long way to go to achieve his true goals. A few days later, the protagonist received a visit from 2 young women interested in working for him. After hearing about his project, they introduced themselves and explained their abilities. While evaluating the candidates, the protagonist began thinking about how he could use them to expand his enterprise even further. After learning about the abilities of the 2 young women, the protagonist decided to hire them to take care of his team's meals and help him develop a future food business. Although they had expected a different kind of work, they accepted the proposal, while the protagonist made it clear that his goal was to expand his ventures gradually and in an organized way. With the help of the 2 new employees, the protagonist began developing the menu for his future food business. Taking advantage of the knowledge from his past life, he decided to introduce dishes unknown in that world, such as different types of pasta, beginning the tests to turn his new idea into reality. While teaching his employees how to prepare a new dish, the protagonist introduced a machine created to produce pasta and shared recipes inspired by his previous life. Since he had no talent for cooking, he decided to focus his efforts on developing ideas and leave the food preparation in the hands of his team. After a long day following the tests of the new recipes, the protagonist went to rest, believing that the work would only continue the next day. However, still during the night, he was awakened by the employees, who came in excitedly to tell him that they had finally managed to prepare the dish successfully. When checking the result of his employees' work, the protagonist confirmed that they had finally managed to prepare the recipe successfully. Satisfied with the team's progress, he decided to take on the next stage of the project and acknowledged that all their effort deserved a reward for their excellent work. Using the knowledge from his previous life, the protagonist taught step by step how to prepare a pasta dish, guiding his employees throughout the entire process. Following his instructions, they learned the recipe and managed to reproduce it, bringing the group closer to opening his new food business. After finishing the recipe, the protagonist and his employees tasted the dish for the first time. Although the result was considered a success, he realized that there were still small adjustments to make in the seasoning. Even so, everyone was satisfied with the progress, confirming that the new business was getting closer and closer to becoming reality. The aroma of the new recipe quickly caught the attention of everyone in the house, and the girls made a point of trying the dish prepared by the protagonist. The pasta was very well received, even drawing the interest of other people and leading the team to prepare a large amount, increasing their confidence even more in the success of the future business. As the events progressed, the story shifted its focus to a magical engineering laboratory at the academy. There, a student named Chris Holden, apprentice of Professor Marino, received the mission of guiding a problematic student from the laboratory, beginning a new stage of the story. When starting his activities in the laboratory, the protagonist explained that he had chosen that place to learn more about magical engineering. His tutor decided to begin by teaching the fundamentals of golem creation and presented a simple magical fusion experiment. While she shared her plans to become a researcher in the capital, she realized that the new student learned quickly and took his studies seriously. During the first practical lesson, the protagonist followed the tutor's instructions and managed to complete the experiment on his very first attempt. Surprised by how easily he reproduced the technique, she realized that he possessed an unusual talent for magical engineering, far above what was expected from a beginner. While learning the fundamentals of magical engineering, the protagonist mastered the technique with unexpected ease and thanked her for the teachings he had received. His rapid growth surprised his tutor, who was impressed to see such a young student understand complex concepts and execute the experiment correctly within his first attempts. Observing the speed with which the protagonist learned and improved, his tutor began to question whether he truly needed her guidance. After seeing him create a golem so easily, she realized that the boy's talent for magical engineering was far greater than she had imagined. After some time, the protagonist was praised by the academy director for his dedication, his good results in magical engineering, and the way he treated the people around him. Encouraged to keep striving, he renewed his determination to improve even further and become someone everyone could be proud of. After ending the semester interview, the protagonist reflected on the social differences of that kingdom, where mages held a privileged position compared to ordinary people. While walking through the academy corridors, he also recalled the impressive reputation of a powerful veteran mage, realizing that there was still an enormous gap between his current level and that of the greatest magic specialists. While walking through the academy, the protagonist noticed the prejudice that existed against ordinary people who could use magic. Reflecting on the rigid division between mages and the rest of the population, he concluded that the society of that kingdom strongly valued magical lineage, making it extremely difficult to break through the barriers imposed by each individual's origin. When meeting some classmates at the academy, the protagonist talked about the semester results and discovered that everyone had passed. As they reflected on the difficulties faced by ordinary people who could use magic, they reaffirmed the friendship they had built over time and continued walking together through the academy. During the conversation with his friends, the protagonist heard career suggestions that could make use of his powerful restoration magic, such as the Navy or the Order of Knights. However, he refused all the options, stating that he already had a well-defined goal and intended to follow his own dream. After the end of the semester, the protagonist decided to leave his worries for another time and enjoy his free time alongside his friends. To celebrate the good results, the three of them went together to watch a theater play, ending that period of studies in a relaxed way. During a mission, the group faced a powerful monster that resisted all attacks. Even under intense pressure, the adventurers continued fighting without retreating until they managed to seize an opportunity to deliver the decisive blow and defeat the creature after an extremely difficult battle. Even after enduring devastating attacks, the frontline warrior remained firm, protecting her companions. Taking advantage of her endurance, the rest of the team launched a coordinated counterattack, showing how much they had evolved by fighting together. With a perfectly coordinated attack, the adventurers took advantage of the opening created by their companions to strike the monster's weak point. The joint offensive defeated the creature once and for all, ending the battle successfully and demonstrating the excellent coordination the group had developed after so much training. After the battle, the adventurers reflected on how much they had evolved since meeting the protagonist. They recognized that he could have used them merely as servants, but chose to train them and give them a new opportunity in life. Admiring his way of acting, they concluded that his true goal was to build something much greater than simply forming a group of adventurers. While talking after the mission, one of the adventurers remembered the dangers she had faced alongside mages in the past and explained that she had only survived thanks to her own endurance. Then, she reinforced her admiration for the protagonist, emphasizing that, unlike most mages, he always used his power to protect and care for the people around him. After the mission's success, the protagonist rewarded one of the adventurers for her good performance, sparking the playful jealousy of another companion, who also wanted to be praised. Seeing the scene, the group shared a relaxed moment, reinforcing the welcoming atmosphere and the strong friendship they had built together. A few days after defeating the wyvern, the group faced a new mission against a huge monster with a resistant shell and claws capable of destroying armor. Even before the much more powerful enemy, the adventurers prepared to face it as a team. During the mission, the group was surprised by the attack of a gigantic armored beetle, an extremely dangerous monster that appeared without warning. With no chance to escape, the adventurers decided to face the creature, while one of them sent a request for help in the hope of receiving reinforcements before the situation got out of control. Facing the ambush, the adventurers reacted quickly and put their plan into action. Using smoke bombs and a powerful flash to disorient the armored beetle, they created an opportunity to escape and buy time while waiting for reinforcements to arrive. While desperately waiting for reinforcements to arrive, the adventurers realized that something extremely fast was approaching the battlefield. When they noticed a mysterious figure wrapped in white light advancing toward the monster, they understood that help had finally arrived. At the most critical moment of the battle, a knight from the Order of the White Dragon appeared as reinforcement and faced the armored beetle head-on. Thanks to her intervention, the group managed to escape from danger, ending the confrontation without suffering any losses. After being rescued, the adventurers confirmed that everyone had survived, although some were injured. The mysterious knight from the Order of the White Dragon assisted the group, and when she saw the enormous beetle defeated so easily, one of the girls realized the huge difference in power between ordinary adventurers and elite mages, lamenting that she had not managed to complete her mission as expected. A few days after the battle, the warrior had already completely recovered her arm thanks to the protagonist's magic. While trying a dish prepared by him, she discovered new flavors and even learned how to use chopsticks during her recovery, realizing once again the care he dedicated to everyone around him. While recovering, the warrior tried the food prepared by the protagonist and was delighted by the taste. Taking advantage of that peaceful moment, she enjoyed the meal until she was completely satisfied, thanking him for the care and attention she had received during her recovery. After regaining her strength, the warrior decided to quickly return to work so she could continue helping her companions. As she went out into the city, she found a place crowded because of a large event and headed toward the new establishment, curious to see how the protagonist's business was developing. During a city festival, the protagonist's new food business began attracting many customers. While his companions took care of the stall and the presentation, the warrior observed everything with satisfaction, proud to see the success of the enterprise that everyone had helped build. During the festival, one of the employees announced the beginning of the theatrical play organized by the group to attract the public. While the spectators gathered in front of the stage, another member prepared to enter the scene, trying to control her nervousness about performing in front of so many people for the first time. While following the festival preparations, the protagonist instructed one of the employees to improve her acting to make the performance more convincing. Even with some awkward and humorous moments during rehearsals, the team continued training, determined to make the play a success and attract even more customers to the business. While the team put the play into practice, the performance began drawing the attention of a large crowd and increased movement at the food stall. Upon realizing that the entire strategy had been planned by the protagonist, including the play's script and the promotion of the business, one of the members was impressed by his creativity and came to admire him even more. While the play attracted more and more people, the restaurant also became packed with customers. One of the members realized that the entertainment strategy was truly increasing sales, and came to admire the protagonist's intelligence even more. While everyone celebrated the success of the business and the great profit obtained during the festival. With the play winning over the audience, the performances became increasingly natural and engaging, attracting a crowd to the stall. While the team served customers and promoted offers to increase sales, the protagonist realized that his strategy had turned the festival into a huge commercial success. While the festival continued, the team took advantage of a calmer moment to rehearse the play and improve their acting. Despite the difficulties some members had in learning the protagonist's instructions, they kept training and helping each other, maintaining their good humor and motivation to make the performance better and better. While resting from rehearsals, one of the members tried a drink and a snack offered by her companions, recovering her energy. Shortly afterward, when she realized that the smell of roasted meat had taken over the place, she interrupted her rest and ran excitedly to enjoy the meal before it ran out. While enjoying a break during the festival, the members rested and drank something to recover their energy. Even after spending hours working, they maintained their good humor, and even the most reserved one got into the mood, discreetly approving the drink while watching her companions have fun. While observing the protagonist managing the stall, the members realized how much he dedicated himself to making the business prosper and began to better understand his leadership. At the same time, he continued organizing sales and serving the long line of customers, showing that the entire strategy was producing excellent results. At the end of the performance, the audience gave a standing ovation and celebrated the show with enthusiasm. The team thanked them for the warm reception, celebrating the enormous success of the play and the festival, which further consolidated the popularity of the protagonist's business. After the great success of the festival, the members celebrated the result they had achieved together and strengthened their bonds of friendship even more. Observing everyone happy and united, the protagonist realized that his true goal went beyond profit, to create an environment where everyone could trust each other and become a real family. While observing the happiness of everyone around her, one of the members reflected on the protagonist's actions and concluded that he had never created that business thinking only about money. In truth, his greatest goal had always been to bring people together and provide a place where everyone could smile and live like a real family. Sometime later, the protagonist gathered a large group of people to announce the creation of a new organization connected to his enterprise. With many interested people present, he began a new stage of his plans, further expanding the influence and reach of his project. Before a large crowd, the protagonist officially announced the founding of his new organization and presented its main objective: to create a group focused on recruiting and organizing professionals for different roles. With the support of his companions, he began this new project, further expanding his businesses and his influence in the city. With the success of his enterprises, the protagonist decided to expand his businesses and bought an abandoned factory to begin a new project. As usual, he acquired injured slaves, healed them all with his magic, and organized each one according to their abilities, forming a team with professionals from different fields and offering paid work so they could rebuild their lives. With the expansion of the business, the protagonist divided the adventurers and workers into teams to avoid conflicts and improve organization. Then, he appointed leaders for each group and officially established a guild responsible for managing all operations, making his organization much more structured and efficient. After organizing his new guild, the protagonist appointed the first leaders of the organization. Mince was chosen as captain, while Roast took the position of vice-captain, officially marking the beginning of the guild's command structure and preparing the team for future missions. Continuing the formation of the guild, the protagonist appointed Pickles as the leader of one of the squads and chose Vongo to act as her vice leader. With the new positions defined and approved by those present, the organization gained an even more solid structure to carry out its future operations. After officially establishing the guild and defining its leaders, the protagonist gathered everyone for a great celebration. Between toasts, gifts, and plenty of food, the members celebrated the beginning of this new phase. While the dishes created by the protagonist became increasingly popular, consolidating the success of his businesses and strengthening the spirit of unity among everyone even more. While the guild celebrated its success, everyone rejoiced like a real family, enjoying the food and each other's company. Observing that scene, the protagonist realized that, without noticing it, his former slaves had built a place where everyone could smile and live with hope, convincing him that his organization would have a bright future. Sometime later, the protagonist returned to the magical engineering laboratory and presented another one of his creations. Although the professor praised the result, his assistant realized that the true merit was not only in the artifact's appearance, but in the practicality and improvements he had developed, once again recognizing his talent for creating innovative solutions. During the research in the laboratory, the protagonist presented a more efficient way to produce and reuse artificial beasts, reducing costs and making their maintenance easier. Impressed by the idea, the professor explained that this solution could revolutionize the field of magical engineering, while the protagonist reinforced his admiration for his master's knowledge and dedication. Seeing the excellent results of the research, the professor decided to officially begin the protagonist's academic project and assigned his assistant to guide him throughout the semester. In addition, he recognized his contribution by including his name in the study, while the protagonist accepted the responsibility and took another important step in his career as a researcher. After agreeing to officially participate in the research project, the protagonist made it clear that he was not seeking fame or recognition, but only wanted to develop useful and profitable ideas. With that, the professor reorganized the authorship of the study, placed his assistant as the direct person responsible for the research, and determined that both of them would work together from then on to develop the project. Over the course of 2 years, the research on modular artificial beasts advanced rapidly and gave rise to new projects, such as the creation of artificial dragons. While his supervisors were promoted and taken to continue their studies in the capital, the protagonist continued evolving in the laboratory, accumulating experience and consolidating his talent as a researcher while still very young. After completing another stage of his research, the protagonist believed that he could finally live a peaceful school life. However, during his studies on cost reduction, he accidentally ended up creating an artificial beast capable of generating energy by absorbing mana from the environment. Although the discovery was revolutionary, the professor decided to keep everything secret for the time being, since they still did not have authorization to reveal an invention of such great impact. After the revolutionary discovery, the protagonist left the responsibility for the research in the professor's hands and asked that the invention only be revealed when it was truly necessary. Then, he ended his work in the laboratory and returned home, while the professor remained analyzing the documents and reflecting on the enormous impact that creation could cause in the future. While the laboratory activities continued normally, the protagonist turned his attention to another one of his businesses. At the same time, Mintz coordinated the work of the group members and organized the removal of materials without raising suspicion. With everything happening discreetly and well-planned, the team continued expanding its operations away from the eyes of outsiders. Seeking to increase his income before finishing his studies, the protagonist decided to invest in a more ambitious plan. He began digging a secret tunnel connecting his headquarters to a dungeon outside the city, ensuring discreet access to valuable resources. At the same time, he realized that his new technology would allow him to create a real magic crystal factory and produce artificial beasts capable of generating energy on their own, opening the way to expand his businesses on a much larger scale. When analyzing his new project, the protagonist concluded that the magic crystals produced in the dungeon near the river were far more efficient than those found in the city, making his future factory extremely profitable. Excited by this discovery, he realized that he had in his hands an almost inexhaustible source of resources. Even so, he knew that the success of the enterprise would depend not only on the technology, but also on keeping his team motivated as the plan advanced. To keep everyone motivated during the tunnel excavation, the protagonist announced that he would reward the most dedicated workers with magical improvements and temporary reinforcements. In addition, he prepared drinks for the entire team after work, creating a more lively work environment. While observing the enthusiasm of his subordinates, he concluded that investing in their well-being and motivation was a small cost compared to the enormous progress his project was achieving. In addition to expanding his underground businesses, the protagonist opened a cafe beside his headquarters and placed his subordinates to work as attendants. The establishment quickly became successful among customers, but managing so many employees and new enterprises at the same time began to require more and more planning. Even satisfied with the results, he realized that he would need to find new ideas to keep making his businesses grow. The next morning, the cafe managed by the protagonist was already full of customers, while his subordinates organized orders, deliveries, and service non-stop. The intense movement caused several products to sell out quickly, forcing the team to promise restocking for the following day. Seeing his businesses functioning in an organized way and attracting more and more people, the protagonist realized that his enterprises were becoming a true success in the city. After the rush of the busiest period, the team finally managed to breathe a sigh of relief and celebrated having overcome another morning of work. While the new employees adapted to the routine and received help from their colleagues, it became clear that the cafe was already operating in an increasingly organized way. At that moment, a visitor arrived at the establishment and asked to speak with one of the people in charge, indicating that a new event was about to begin. On a rare day off for one of his employees, the protagonist took advantage of the morning to rest before returning to his businesses. Meanwhile, the cafe remained busy, reflecting the establishment's growing popularity among the townspeople. Observing the success of the place and the new trends emerging among the customers, his subordinates realized that the enterprise was becoming increasingly influential, setting the stage for new opportunities. While enjoying her day off, Chicken talked with a new employee. A rabbit girl recently transferred from the heavy labor team to the cafe. The newcomer showed admiration for the attendance routine and dreamed of one day earning a similar position. During the conversation, Chicken mentioned that she intended to use her rest time to go out with friends using the salary she received. While the new employee could not hide her healthy envy of that opportunity and of the new possibilities emerging within the group. During her day off, Chicken went out shopping and realized that she could already buy clothes and other items thanks to the money she earned working for the protagonist. However, after getting excited by the shop windows, she ended up reflecting that she was starting to forget her former condition as a slave. Even though she was happy with her new life, she decided to control her impulses and act responsibly so she would not lose sight of her reality. While shopping around the city, Chicken met Roast, who quickly noticed her interest in the clothes displayed in the shop windows. The two talked about fashion, but Roast revealed that the group's uniforms had an enchantment that prevented them from getting dirty easily, making them much more practical than ordinary clothes. Even so, Chicken insisted that the pieces in the store were completely different and remained enchanted by the new things she could now admire thanks to her new life. While Roast explained that the new uniforms used high-quality materials and enchantments, as well as a carefully planned design, Chicken noticed that she spoke with the same enthusiasm the protagonist showed when discussing his own inventions. Upon noticing this similarity, she humorously concluded that subordinates ended up acquiring some of their master's habits and interests over time. Seeing Roast wearing high-quality clothes, Chicken was surprised and wanted to know how she had managed to get such expensive pieces. Roast explained that she had never been interested in fashion and that all those clothes were gifts she had received from acquaintances over time, including adventurer friends. After hearing the story, Chicken began to see Roast in a different way and realized that her companion was far more popular and beloved than she had imagined. After discovering the origin of Roast's clothes, Chicken became determined to change her own situation. Inspired by the group's success, she decided to open a clothing store and produce beautiful, affordable pieces to sell in the city. Convinced that she could turn this idea into a great business, she set off full of enthusiasm, determined to achieve her independence and prosper through her own merit. Sometime later, the protagonist was informed that he would receive a new research supervisor sent directly from the capital. Although he believed there was still no one qualified to guide him at that academy, the news made him curious. Shortly afterward, while walking through the corridors, a mysterious woman addressed him by name, beginning an encounter that promised to change the direction of his research. The protagonist met Lola Sulela, a researcher sent from the capital who became part of his laboratory. With her arrival, a new phase of his research began. While walking through the city, the protagonist happened to meet Lola Sulela by chance. The two spoke briefly, and she invited him to watch a theater play. During the conversation, the protagonist learned more about Lola and realized that the two had been meeting frequently by coincidence. Taking advantage of the opportunity, she revealed that she was free and suggested that they spend some time together. Lola invited the protagonist to get to know the city better, and the two went out together for a walk before taking a break at a cafe. While talking at the cafe, Lola told stories from her time in the army and impressed the protagonist with her combat experiences. At the same time, he began to suspect that she was trying to get closer to him because of her interest in his research and his innovative magic crystal technology. After spending hours accompanying Lola through the city and listening to stories about her military past, the protagonist discovered that she had received important decorations for her achievements in combat, realizing that his new supervisor possessed far more experience than he had imagined. During the walk, the two talked about theater, and the protagonist commented on his liking for stories of overcoming adversity. The conversation ended up revealing an unexpected connection between Lola and a famous playwright, making the encounter even more interesting. At the end of the walk, Lola revealed that she was a fan of the playwright they had mentioned and invited the protagonist to watch another play the following week. He accepted the invitation, marking a new meeting between the two. After saying goodbye to Lola, the protagonist returned to the laboratory, but he continued thinking about the conversation they had and the famous playwright she had mentioned while resuming his research routine. After a week of research alongside Lola, the protagonist resumed his commitment to meet her for the promised outing, beginning their new meeting. At the reunion, the protagonist revealed that he was eager to talk about the famous playwright. Amused by his curiosity, Lola decided to continue the conversation while the two had coffee. While they talked, Lola realized that the protagonist was only interested in hearing her stories. Amused by the situation, she decided to continue sharing her past with him. Lola explained that the famous playwright was very different from the image created by rumors. Despite his talent, he was merely a young man passionate about research and theater, which awakened the protagonist's interest even more. Lola revealed that she knew about the protagonist's invention and explained that the kingdom wanted to recognize his talent by granting him a noble title in order to use his abilities for the country's benefit. Lola explained that the protagonist's research had already drawn the kingdom's attention because of its strategic importance. Then, she began to reveal another personal matter, leaving the young man surprised. Lola revealed that the simplest way for the protagonist to receive a noble title would be through marriage to her. Surprised by the unexpected proposal, he was left completely speechless, while she tried to reassure him, explaining that everything would depend on his decision and that there was no obligation to accept. Lola explained that she had been expelled from her family and therefore lived independently. Then, she revealed that she had permanently lost her ability to use magic due to a serious failure in her magic organ, which also prevented her from having children with great magical aptitude. After learning about her past and her difficulties, the protagonist began to better understand the reasons behind her marriage proposal. After hearing Lola's entire story, the protagonist revealed that he possessed magic capable of restoring damaged magic organs. The revelation left Lola completely shocked, unable to believe that her condition, considered irreversible, might finally be cured. Upon realizing that the protagonist knew details about her condition, Lola was deeply shaken and lost control of her emotions, causing an explosion of magic that destroyed part of the place. After calming down and apologizing for what had happened, she tried to resume the conversation, while the people around them checked whether everyone was all right. Still emotional, Lola confessed that she was becoming increasingly interested in the protagonist and returned to the subject of the marriage proposal. Surprised, he explained that the initiative came from the kingdom and not from him. Before answering, however, he asked for time to ask some questions and better understand the situation. Lola answered the protagonist's questions and revealed that her true dream was to open a theater and build a family based on feelings, not political interests. Then, she directly asked whether he would truly consider marrying her, making it clear that she wanted a genuine relationship before any commitment. The protagonist admitted that he had never seriously thought about romance and confessed that he did not know how to deal with that kind of feeling. Even so, he decided not to reject Lola immediately and accepted getting to know her better before making any decision. Hearing this, she became happy and stated that the most important thing would be what the two of them would build from that point on. Lola explained that she saw the protagonist as someone very important to her, but not yet in a romantic way. Then, she recalled that on the battlefield, there had never been room for doubt or hesitation, revealing a little more of the heavy past she carried. After remembering the horrors of war and confessing that she wanted to erase those memories, Lola decided to move forward and began preparing for her future marriage. Even though she was insecure, she started worrying about her appearance and tried to discover how she could draw more of the protagonist's attention, leaving her maid completely speechless at her ideas. On the day of the meeting, Lola went to meet the protagonist so they could watch the theater play together. While walking to the place, the two talked about the show they would see, beginning another moment of closeness between them. While heading to the theater, the protagonist showed unusual excitement when talking about the play, making Lola happy to see him so enthusiastic. At the same time, she believed that her efforts to appear more attractive were taking effect, without realizing that he was focused only on the expectation of watching the performance. After watching the play, Lola was delighted to see the protagonist's happiness during the performance. Then, she took him to a reserved cafe, where the two continued their date. While tasting the sweets prepared especially for the occasion, Lola praised the flavor of the food, and the protagonist was satisfied to realize that she had liked the surprise. After spending time together laughing and talking, the date came to an end. The protagonist was picked up by Mince, while Lola watched his departure, satisfied to feel that the two had grown even closer. Seeing the group accompanying the protagonist, Lola suspected that he was forming a small private army. However, he explained that those people were adventurers and former soldiers who worked to help him collect magic crystals and manage his businesses. While Lola analyzed the protagonist's group, Mince noticed that she was observing everyone carefully and pointed out that each member had been trained for different roles. The response caught Lola's attention, and she began to view Schenker's group with even greater interest. To test the group's loyalty, Lola provoked some of the protagonist's subordinates and was impressed by how quickly everyone reacted to protect him. Upon realizing the level of training and devotion of his companions, she concluded that Schenker had gathered a far more competent team than she had imagined. It was explained that magic crystals were the main source of energy in that world and indispensable for the functioning of society. Mages used magic in practically every daily activity thanks to a special organ capable of storing magical particles from the environment. Over the years, the excess of these particles turned into magic crystals inside the body, revealing the origin of this valuable resource. It was revealed that excessive use of magic wore down the organ responsible for storing it, potentially rendering it permanently useless. Faced with this explanation, the question arose of whether it would be possible to restore that organ, awakening everyone's interest in a solution that could change the fate of countless mages. After confirming that the patient no longer had a functional magic organ, the protagonist began an experimental procedure to restore its functions. Before the expectations of those present, he began the surgery using his own technique, attempting to accomplish something that had until then been considered impossible in that world. 2 weeks after the procedure, the protagonist explained that the magic organ restoration technique could completely transform the lives of mages, but also attract countless problems. As he reflected on the matter, he realized that, throughout all this time, no one had paid attention to a fundamental part of how magic worked, making his discovery even more revolutionary. Lola presented 3 possible paths for dealing with the revolutionary magic organ restoration technique: handing it over to the army, keeping it secret, or making it available in a controlled manner. After reflecting on the consequences of each option, the protagonist decided to follow her advice and offer the treatment only to war veterans, using this initiative as a starting point to expand it in the future. After the surgery, it was confirmed that Lola's magic organ was recovering successfully, proving that the technique truly worked. With trusted witnesses present, the protagonist discussed the next steps and was reassured to know that the discovery would be shared only with selected people, reducing the risk of that revolutionary technology falling into the wrong hands. Although the restoration technique had worked, it was explained that only people with great endurance would be able to withstand the extreme pain caused by the procedure. While the specialists discussed its limitations, Lola celebrated the recovery of her magic organ and, now much more cheerful, went back to teasing and provoking the protagonist as before. After completely recovering her magic organ, Lola returned to using magic with extreme precision, impressing even the protagonist with her skill. Happy to have regained her powers, she sincerely thanked him for everything he had done and said she was grateful to have him as her fiancé. Before he could react, Lola surprised him further with a bold action, leaving the boy completely speechless. Completely recovered, Lola did not hide her happiness and tried to hug the protagonist in front of everyone. The scene drew amused reactions from those present, while she declared that young people should show their feelings without shame, making the protagonist increasingly embarrassed. It was decided that the treatment would be carried out in secret, with patients attended to individually and only those willing to accept the risks and costs of the procedure. While the preparations were organized, the protagonist agreed with the plan and waited for the treatments to begin, knowing that new patients would soon arrive to try to recover their magic organs. The protagonist discovered that he would receive a large amount of gold for each treatment performed, paid directly by Lola. Upon realizing that she possessed enormous prestige, wealth, and influence, he concluded that she truly had the means to finance the entire project, becoming even more determined to make his technique help as many people as possible. Even though he was used to keeping his distance from relationships, the protagonist began to realize that Lola was very affectionate and liked to show affection at every moment. Although he became completely embarrassed by her actions, he noticed that, little by little, his heart no longer reacted in the same way and began to accept that closeness more naturally. A former commander revealed that he had lost his magic organ during a battle and since then had been forced to abandon his military career while his health worsened over the years. When he learned that there was a way to restore the magic organ, he decided to seek out the protagonist, seeing that technique as his last hope to recover the life he had lost. Even debilitated and unable to walk on his own, the veteran secretly traveled to Torquiva with the help of his wife to meet the protagonist. Upon arriving, he finally met Sawadi Shankar, the young man responsible for restoring the magic organs of several veterans, placing in him his last hope of returning to a normal life. Upon meeting the protagonist, the veteran admitted that he had never heard of a technique capable of restoring a magic organ and, for that reason, had initially distrusted the idea. Even so, with no other alternative and encouraged by his wife, he decided to trust Sawadi and place his last hope in that revolutionary treatment. The protagonist explained that the magic organ influenced the entire body and that restoring it was only the first step toward recovering the veteran's health. From there, he began a long rehabilitation process with treatments, exercises, and proper nutrition. As the days passed, the former soldier gradually recovered his physical condition and even teeth he had lost years earlier, regaining hope of living normally. 1 week after the beginning of his recovery, the veteran could already see a future again. While talking with his wife, he realized that his greatest desire was not only to recover his health, but to return to living by her side and fulfill dreams that had been left behind. Witnessing that reunion filled with hope, the protagonist confirmed that all the effort to develop the technique had truly been worth it. Seeing the couple's happiness, the protagonist discreetly withdrew to give them a moment alone. Then, he turned his attention to the next patient, a doctor who had also lost his magic organ. Without wasting time, he began another restoration procedure, continuing the treatment that was already beginning to return hope to other people. After recovering his magic organ, the doctor was able to once again experience small pleasures he had lost, such as smoking a cigar. Although his body was still adapting to the recovery, he emotionally thanked the protagonist, realizing that he had finally recovered an important part of the life he believed he had lost forever. After completing the treatment, the doctor deeply thanked the protagonist for giving him back the chance to live normally. Moved, he said he felt as though he was finally returning home after losing his magic organ on the battlefield. As they said goodbye, the protagonist wished for him to fully recover his health, ending another successful treatment. After completing a few more treatments, the protagonist began thinking about how to invest the money he was receiving. While evaluating new business opportunities, he considered expanding his activities with more profitable ventures, such as farms and other services, seeking to strengthen his influence and fortune even further. While planning new investments to expand his businesses, the protagonist began reflecting on how he could move the city's economy and generate even more wealth. Lost in his thoughts, he ended up making a suspicious expression, drawing Lola's attention, as she quickly realized that he was plotting yet another ambitious idea. Lola realized that the protagonist was so focused on making money that he ended up making a frightening expression and warned him not to act on impulse. After hearing her advice, he regained his calm and remembered that his true objective at the moment was to build his own theater, leaving the new profit plans for later. While the protagonist took care of his businesses, his employees continued working to keep the store stocked and organized. At the end of the workday, one of them returned with new supplies, being happily welcomed by her companions, showing that the enterprise continued growing thanks to the effort of the entire team. The employees celebrated the store's good performance after selling many products throughout the month. Motivated by the growth of the business, they decided to work even harder to produce higher quality items, determined to attract more customers and increase sales even more in the coming days. While organizing the store's work, the employees commented that the protagonist always found a way to turn simple ideas into profitable businesses. During the conversation, they discovered that he had already started yet another enterprise and realized that his ambition to expand his businesses was far from over. The employees commented that the tunnel where they worked was a secret that needed to be protected, so they avoided revealing information about the place. They also recognized the effort of the manager and the entire team to keep the business running, feeling proud to be part of that enterprise that continued growing every day. As the city continued its routine, rumors about impressive feats performed by adventurers spread among the population and awakened the admiration of many. Inspired by these stories, the store employees began to dream of one day becoming adventurers as well, imagining what it would be like to live great adventures instead of merely hearing stories about them. Hearing her colleagues' desire to become an adventurer, another employee explained that such a life was far more dangerous than it seemed, even with the existence of skilled healers. She revealed that she preferred to continue working at the store, where she felt fulfilled and safe, remembering that, on an adventure, a single mistake could cost one's life. At the end of the day, the employees talked about how happy they felt working at the store, considering the environment welcoming and safe. Even with the intense work, they preferred that routine to the dangerous life of an adventurer. After saying goodbye to one another, each followed her own way, satisfied to be part of that place. After closing the store, the employees gathered in the tunnel to relax and share the food they had brought from work. In a light and relaxed atmosphere, they talked, joked, and enjoyed each other's company, reinforcing the bonds of friendship they had created since they began working together. The protagonist received the news that the capital had approved generous funding for his new project involving magic crystals. Taking advantage of the opportunity, he and Lola began research to develop an energy source based on those crystals, believing that the discovery could revolutionize transportation and further boost the kingdom's development. After securing the funding, the protagonist discovered that he would have only 3 months to complete a demonstration of the project between two cities. With an extremely tight deadline, he and his team realized that they would need to begin work immediately, gathering materials, labor, and all the necessary structure to fulfill the mission within the established time. With the project approved, the entire team entered an intense preparation routine. While the professor in charge dealt with documents and research coordination, the protagonist received authorization to dedicate all his time to the work. Alongside the other researchers, he immersed himself completely in the project's development, spending days and nights focused on meeting the tight deadline. 1 month later, the project tests were already showing important progress. During a demonstration, the prototype managed to move as expected, but ended up being stopped by a small stone in its path. Despite the failure, the protagonist and the professor viewed the result with optimism, concluding that the technology worked and merely needed more adjustments before being ready. After analyzing the prototype, the protagonist explained how he intended to transform it into a functional train. His plan was to adapt the structure using already existing parts and divide the system into modules, such as engine, transmission, and steering, making the project simpler to manufacture, maintain, and improve until it was ready for large-scale use. Over 3 months of intense work, the prototype gradually evolved. Although it still had limitations, it already demonstrated that the concept was viable and represented a huge advance for magical engineering. While they discussed the next improvements to increase its efficiency, the protagonist was called by a researcher who seemed to have new important information to share. After months of dedication, the protagonist finally completed the development of the train, powered by a continuously operating magic engine. Even exhausted from the long nights of work in the laboratory, he contemplated the result with satisfaction, realizing that all the effort had been worth it and that the project had the potential to transform the future of transportation in the kingdom. After months of research and development, the protagonist and his team managed to complete the first prototype of the train, powered by a continuously operating magic engine, before the final deadline. Although it still needed several locomotives to pull a single wagon, the invention already functioned without depending on magic crystals as its energy source, representing an enormous technological advance and the first step toward revolutionizing transportation in the kingdom. During the prototype presentation, the team acknowledged that the train still had limitations, mainly the low power of the engine, which required several locomotives to move a single wagon. Even so, the protagonist remained confident, believing that this problem would be solved in the future and that the invention represented only the first step of a great revolution in the kingdom's transportation. When the great day arrived, the team carried out the final tests and confirmed that all the train's systems were functioning correctly. Surrounded by researchers, soldiers, and authorities, the protagonist followed the demonstration with some nervousness, while the professor, excited, gave the order to depart. Thus, the first official test of the magic train finally began. During the first minutes of the demonstration, the train continued functioning without failures, maintaining its movement steadily for a long period. While those present watched the test with enthusiasm, the protagonist remained calm, since he had already expected that result and knew that the true challenge would still be increasing the engine's power to make the technology truly practical. While some spectators began to grow anxious because they did not notice the train moving, the protagonist remained calm and explained that everything was happening according to plan. Shortly afterward, the vehicle began to slowly gain movement on the tracks, confirming that the system worked and drawing sighs of relief from the team responsible for the project. After a long period of tension, the train finally reached a stable speed and continued its journey without showing any failures. While the guests watched the demonstration with enthusiasm, the professor, completely exhausted after months of work, was finally able to relax. Seeing the project functioning and advancing toward its destination, the protagonist realized that all the effort had been worth it. While the train continued its journey without problems, the passengers took advantage of the route to relax, talk, and even play cards. The protagonist ended up winning another match, amusing everyone around him. At the same time, the scenery seen through the windows caught the passengers' attention, reinforcing the feeling that the project marked the beginning of a new era for transportation in the kingdom. During the journey, the passengers took the opportunity to enjoy themselves, even using magic to eliminate monsters that appeared near the railway tracks. Although it took several hours to reach their destination, the trip was smooth and enjoyable. When they finally arrived in the city of Luvuma, the demonstration was considered a complete success, proving that the train had the potential to revolutionize transportation between cities. After the successful journey, the team officially announced the completion of the demonstration of the first train powered by a crystal-free magical engine. The success of the test was celebrated by researchers, military personnel, and government officials, all of whom recognized the importance of that achievement. With the experiment completed and the technology finally validated, the project marked the beginning of a new era of transportation for the kingdom. Following the successful demonstration, the protagonist concluded that the project had been a major breakthrough, even though it still had several limitations. The train would be taken back to be dismantled and improved, while the team had already begun planning the next round of tests. Knowing that much work still lay ahead, he decided to prepare himself for the next stage in the development of that revolutionary technology. After the success of the demonstration, the train project entered a new phase of development under the supervision of the capital. The researchers began working on an even faster version, using a hybrid engine that combined magical crystals with the new technology created by the protagonist. As the significance of the project became recognized across the continent, the new railway was officially named in honor of Professor Marino, the person primarily responsible for the research. Meanwhile, the protagonist was once again called upon to accompany the next stages of the project that promised to revolutionize transportation throughout the kingdom. The overwhelming success of the project moved Professor Marino to the point where he could not hold back his tears of happiness. The protagonist was pleased to see him fulfill a lifelong dream, while Lola watched the bond between the two with a slight feeling of jealousy. Shortly afterward, as they left the area together, their presence caught the attention of those nearby, who were surprised to see the pair walking side by side and began wondering where they were headed. As they walked through the streets, the protagonist and his companions attracted attention because they were riding exotic creatures that were rarely seen by the local population. People stared at the animals in amazement, trying to figure out what species they were and commenting on their unusual colors and appearances. While the crowd remained fascinated, the group continued on their way without paying any attention to the curious stares they attracted wherever they went. As they made their way through the city, the group continued drawing curious glances because of their extravagant mounts. Many of the townspeople recognized the protagonist and commented on how impressive both his presence and the unusual creatures he was riding were. While working on his research, the protagonist was interrupted by a researcher who insisted that he create an even faster and more eye-catching mount. Despite being busy, he turned down the request and returned to focusing on his responsibilities. While Lola and her fellow adventurers were away on their journey, the protagonist took the opportunity to test the speed of his new mount. The experiment amazed everyone by demonstrating extraordinary speed, confirming the success of his creation. After testing the mount, Lola also expressed her interest in having one of her own and praised its appearance. Soon afterward, the conversation took a more personal turn when she began teasing the protagonist about his clothes and, without any hesitation, admitted that she liked the way he dressed, leaving him completely speechless. Sometime later, Lola and her group finally returned from their journey and found the protagonist resting beside his new mount. As they chatted casually, she enjoyed a quiet moment smoking, while the protagonist watched everyone arrive and sipped his drink, marking the beginning of a warm and friendly reunion. While resting after their reunion, Lola's companions commented on the positive impression the protagonist had made ever since they first met him. They concluded that, in addition to his personality, his talent as a mage was also worthy of admiration. At the same time, one of them looked up at the sky, as though reflecting on everything that had happened up to that point. The peaceful moment was suddenly interrupted when one of the adventurers noticed a gigantic centipede approaching and warned everyone to flee immediately. As the group prepared to confront the threat, the protagonist asked them to protect his mount and watched Lola charge toward the enormous monster alone, fully prepared to face it. Lola confronted the gigantic centipede without the slightest hesitation and defeated the enormous monster with a single devastating strike, leaving everyone astonished by her strength. Upon witnessing the scene, the protagonist simply smiled, as though he had expected that outcome all along, while the rest of the group stared in shock at the overwhelming display of power. After defeating the monster with a single attack, Lola received countless compliments from her companions, who were amazed by both her strength and precision. She accepted their praise naturally while the group continued talking about the battle, still astonished by how effortlessly the threat had been eliminated. After the battle, the companions asked the protagonist to share some of the experiences he had gone through during his time as a soldier. Without minding the memories of the past, he accepted the request and began recounting stories from old battlefields, while everyone settled in to listen carefully to his tales. After completing a major research project, the protagonist finally found himself with more free time. During that period, he reunited with his brother and jokingly asked about the absence of his sister-in-law, only to learn that she was relaxing with other women from the neighborhood. Through casual conversations and lighthearted moments, he realized that, after being so busy for such a long time, he could finally enjoy a little peace and quiet with his family. While spending time with his family, the protagonist was reminded by his brother that he was growing older and needed to start thinking about his future. Shortly afterward, while looking for a few acquaintances around town, he discovered that they were nowhere to be found and decided to head elsewhere, making the most of his rare time off. While visiting the restaurant managed by his subordinates, the protagonist found everyone discussing new ideas for the business. As they praised the manager's competence and jokingly commented on her love life, the group enjoyed the relaxed atmosphere while talking about work and their plans for the future. The conversation continued in a cheerful atmosphere, with the protagonist joking about the girl's comments while everyone laughed at the situation. Soon afterward, his subordinates explained that, although they were slaves, they lived comfortably under his protection and did not mind their current circumstances, making it clear that they were satisfied with the way they were being treated. Sometime later, the protagonist visited the facility responsible for producing magical crystals and confirmed that the project was progressing even better than expected. With the factory operating at full capacity and producing thousands of crystals every day, he realized that he was getting closer than ever to achieving his goals and expanding his business in the future. While overseeing the factory's operations, the protagonist discussed several adjustments to the production of magical crystals. During the conversation, the researcher began reflecting on her future and responsibilities, leaving the protagonist intrigued. In the end, she chose not to elaborate any further, and the two returned their full attention to their work. Sometime later, the protagonist gathered all of his subordinates to thank them for the effort and dedication they had shown up to that point. He then announced that he would soon leave behind his youth and begin a new chapter of his life through marriage. Before ending the gathering, he encouraged each of them to build their own families, pursue their own happiness, and take responsibility for their own futures, moving everyone with his heartfelt words. The protagonist explained that he still could not completely free all of his subordinates because the clan still depended on their trustworthiness and discretion. As compensation, he announced that those who remained with the group would receive salaries, be allowed to own homes, work freely within the city, and even get married. The announcement was met with tremendous enthusiasm, and his followers celebrated the decision, delighted by the future they would now have by his side. After announcing the clan's new rules, the protagonist called several of his most trusted subordinates to confirm that they would continue standing by his side. One after another, they answered his call without hesitation, demonstrating unwavering loyalty and making it clear that they were ready to accompany him through the challenges that lay ahead. He then made an announcement that would change the lives of several members of the clan forever. Standing before everyone, he declared that 5 of his subordinates would officially cease to be slaves, recognizing the loyalty and dedication they had shown over the years. The news was received with overwhelming emotion, marking the beginning of a new chapter for those who had finally earned their freedom. After gaining their freedom, the former slaves thanked the protagonist and reaffirmed that they would continue by his side of their own will. Each one demonstrated loyalty in her own way, while some even joked about the future. Seeing that everyone remained united, even without being bound by obligation, the protagonist was satisfied with the trust he had built with his group. After the ceremony, the former slaves promised to continue giving their best to help the protagonist. However, The serious atmosphere soon gave way to relaxation when the clan members ran to celebrate around him, turning the moment into a great party filled with joy and gratitude. While being surrounded by the former slaves in a lively celebration, the protagonist realized the weight of the responsibility of leading a real family. After the party, he reflected on the day and concluded that, despite the confusion, seeing everyone happy made all the effort worth it. During the conversation, the protagonist revealed that he had accidentally created a reusable artificial magic crystal, capable of being used several times without wearing out. Although its capacity was still lower than that of an ordinary crystal, he realized that the invention had enormous potential to revolutionize the use of magic and improve people's lives. Upon realizing the potential of the reusable magic crystal, the protagonist concluded that the invention could completely transform society. Even so, he decided to keep its existence secret for the time being. While discussing the matter with his allies, they warned him about the possible economic impacts and suggested presenting the discovery to the researcher in charge before making any decision. During the conversation, the protagonist suggested limiting the number of uses of the reusable magic crystal to increase its safety and avoid excessive impacts. The protagonist liked the idea, praised the suggestion, and decided to implement this improvement in the next model, making the invention much more viable. During the conversation, the researcher revealed that she had always suspected the protagonist was hiding something special. She explained that the way he treated his subordinates and his personality gave off an unusual aura, similar to that of someone who had already died. Surprised by the observation, the protagonist did not know how to respond to that revelation. During the conversation, the researcher revealed that she believed the protagonist carried the aura of someone who had already died and received a second chance to live in another world. Hearing that theory, he tried to disguise it with a laugh and treated the comment as a joke, avoiding revealing the truth about his past. Upon hearing the researcher's theory, the protagonist tried to deny it, but ended up being overwhelmed by an unexpected emotion and began crying without understanding why. Taking advantage of his reaction, she stated that only someone who had already died could understand certain feelings, and directly questioned whether he had returned to life, leaving the protagonist completely speechless. After being confronted, the protagonist realized that he could no longer hide his greatest secret. Convinced that he had finally found someone capable of understanding him, he gathered the courage to reveal the truth about his past, even believing that it would be difficult for anyone to accept his story. At that moment, the protagonist decided that he no longer wanted to hide the truth. Convinced that he had finally found someone who could understand and accept him, he gathered the courage to reveal his greatest secret and tell who he truly was. When he finally decided to reveal his greatest secret, the protagonist was taken over by an internal battle. His own conscience made him remember all the lies he had told in order to survive, and warned him that no one would believe his story. Even surrounded by people who trusted him, the fear of being rejected made him hesitate once again before revealing the truth about his origin. Upon noticing the protagonist's hesitation, the researcher reassured him and promised to listen to his story until the end, without judgment. She guaranteed that she would accept any truth he decided to reveal, and that she would stay by his side regardless of his past. Her words gave the protagonist the confidence that perhaps it was finally time to tell who he really was. After hesitating for a long time, the protagonist finally revealed his greatest secret. He was a person who had come from another world. To his surprise, the researcher received the confession with a smile and complete naturalness, accepting his words without judgment. For the first time since arriving in that world, the protagonist felt enormous relief at finally sharing the truth with someone who truly believed him. After revealing the entire truth about his origin, the protagonist broke down in tears and finally found someone willing to embrace him without judgment. In the following days, the relationship between the two strengthened even further, while the clan's routine continued normally, with his allies taking care of the preparations, acquiring new equipment, and organizing resources for the next challenges. While organizing the clan's equipment, one of the members showed the protagonist various weapons she had kept as mementos from her old adventures. Each item carried special value because it had been received from important people in her life, revealing the strong attachment she had to her past. At the end of organizing the equipment, one of the members revealed that her most precious memento was a dagger received from her former master. While she remembered that moment fondly, the person in charge of inventory completed the equipment inspection and thanked everyone for their cooperation, ending another stage of the clan's preparations. While walking through the city, one of the clan members ended up moving away from the group and became thoughtful as she remembered the past. Noticing her state, a companion approached her and offered her a hot drink to help warm her up and cheer her up. While resting, one of the clan members talked with a companion and ended up showing that she was tired of the intense routine of managing the adventurer's equipment. Despite the exhausting work, she continued fulfilling her responsibilities and remained determined to give her best for the group. While talking, the two discussed the idea of opening a brewery, but realized that finding a good location would be difficult because of the rising property prices in the city. With few options available, they continued searching for a solution to get the project off the ground. During the conversation, one of the members confessed that she did not feel prepared to take on a leadership position and believed that other people would do a better job. Her companion, however, countered her insecurities and encouraged her to trust herself more, even amid jokes. As they said goodbye, one of the members returned to work and, before leaving, remembered a property that could serve as the brewery. Curious, the other decided to check the place, hoping to finally find an ideal space for the new project. Following her companion's tip, she arrived at an abandoned plot of land that had remained empty since a fire that happened years earlier. Even suspicious of the place, she decided to investigate it further, believing that it could be the ideal space to finally carry out the brewery project. When visiting the plot of land, she confirmed that the place seemed suitable for the brewery. Then, she met the owner, an elderly man known for driving away everyone interested in the property, and gathered the courage to start a conversation about the land. While talking with the owner, she introduced herself and tried to negotiate for the land, but noticed that the elderly man suddenly became ill and fainted. Faced with the unexpected situation, she immediately ran to help him. Seeing the elderly man become ill, she panicked and tried to understand what was happening. Not knowing how to act, she asked nearby people for help while seeking assistance as quickly as possible. After the elderly man received care, the protagonist reassured the girl and explained that she was not to blame for what had happened. Taking advantage of the situation, he commented that the land negotiation might even become easier, making her finally regain her calm and recover hope in the project. After calming down, the girl thanked them for the help she had received. Then, she reflected on her insecurities regarding the leadership position, while a companion encouraged her to trust more in her own abilities. Upon hearing the girl's confession, her companion revealed that she had already gone through the same insecurities and explained that a lack of confidence was part of the growth process. With that, she encouraged her to believe more in herself and move forward with greater determination. The companion recalled that, in the past, she did not feel part of the group and did not understand the others' dedication to work. However, after seeing them risk their own lives to protect the place they considered their home, she finally understood the true meaning of that effort. After hearing the whole story, the protagonist decided to entrust her with an important responsibility. The conversation made the girl realize that she had finally found a place where she was valued and where she truly felt she belonged. The companion reassured the girl, explaining that she would never be abandoned and that she could always ask for another role if she was not happy with her current one. Her words gave the young woman more confidence, making her realize how much she was valued and supported by everyone around her. While reflecting on the protagonist, the two concluded that he seemed like an altruistic and admirable person at first glance. However, one of them believed that he still hid his true feelings, and that, once he fully trusted the people around him, he would finally reveal who he really was. The clan members realized that the protagonist carried a great emotional burden, but decided to respect his time and wait until he was ready to reveal his true past. Convinced that trust between them was the most important thing, they believed that day would come naturally. The next morning, the protagonist appeared before one of the clan members with a smile on his face and greeted her normally. Without imagining what was to come, she realized that this would be the beginning of a very important conversation between the two. Upon realizing that the protagonist had finally decided to open his heart, the clan members understood that everything had been possible thanks to the people who had earned his trust. The next morning, they welcomed him normally, marking the beginning of a new phase in his relationship with everyone around him. While talking about the protagonist, one of the members commented that he was still a difficult person to understand. Even so, both realized that he was gradually changing and believed that, with time, he would be able to overcome the weight he carried in his heart. At the end of the conversation, the girl was released to rest and received new tasks for the following day. While watching her companion leave, she realized that, despite the sincere smile, she still hid a deep loneliness, reinforcing the feeling that the protagonist was not the only one carrying a heavy burden in his heart. While reflecting on everything that had happened, the girl realized that she still did not completely understand the feelings of the people around her. Even so, she decided to move forward, believing that, with time, she would finally be able to express everything she carried in her heart and find her true place among those she now considered her family. A few days later, the protagonist announced a tasting event to present the new brewery to important people in the city and invited the girl to participate. Surprised to have her work recognized, she set aside her insecurity and decided to give her best at that great moment. Upon arriving at the tasting event, the girl found the place in a festive atmosphere, with everyone trying the drinks produced by the protagonist. Despite the mess caused by the beer's success, she was welcomed with enthusiasm and realized that her work had directly contributed to that great result. During the celebration, the protagonist insisted that the girl try the beer. Even reluctant because she still had work to do, she ended up giving in to the pressure from those present and took the first sip, without imagining the exaggerated reaction the drink would provoke. While tasting the new drink, the protagonist explained that it could have many other uses beyond consumption, such as disinfectant, fuel, and raw material for different products. Excited by the possibilities, they decided to leave the improvements for when the brewery was ready and continued planning the project's future. While studying the guest list for an important event, the protagonist realized that he would have difficulty memorizing so many names and showed concern about the responsibility awaiting him. Noticing his difficulty, Lola approached to help him, took the list to analyze it, and began guiding him, making the preparation for the ceremony much calmer. While analyzing the guest list alongside Lola, the protagonist discovered that many of those names belonged to former soldiers who had served under her command in the past. The revelation brought deep memories to Lola, who tried to hide her emotion but ended up being overcome by nostalgia upon recognizing a name that awakened special memories from her old life. While talking about the guests, Lola remembered an old rival for whom she held great respect and commented that she intended to meet her again at a future wedding, where she wanted to surprise her with the progress of her magic. Then, the conversation returned to the guest list, and the two realized that none of Lola's family members would be present, since they all still lived in the capital. While talking, Lola remembered her hometown and said that her family lived near the border, where the climate was colder and the sea was part of everyday life. Although she kept good memories of that place, she explained that she did not blame her relatives for her situation, though the protagonist believed that a family should support its own children in the most difficult moments. Reflecting on Lola's words, the protagonist realized that his own family also carried responsibilities and difficulties he had never fully considered. Touched by the conversation, the two shared the desire to build a different family in the future, based on understanding, mutual support, and happiness, strengthening the bond between them even further. After sealing their promise to build a future together, Lola apologized for her demands in the past and renewed her determination to make that dream succeed alongside the protagonist. Amid the relaxed atmosphere, she revealed that she wanted to have 5 children, completely surprising the young man. Even without knowing how to react to the unexpected proposal, he answered with a smile and reaffirmed that he would do everything possible to make that future come true with her, before Lola revealed that she still had one more thing to say. Days later, the long-awaited wedding day arrived, and the church was carefully decorated to receive nobles, soldiers, and guests from various regions. While the guests gathered and greeted one another, the ceremony began to take shape in an elegant and solemn environment, marking the beginning of one of the most important events in the kingdom. Moments before the ceremony began, the protagonist received compliments on his appearance and tried to ease the tension by talking with his future father-in-law. Despite the relaxed atmosphere, he could not hide his nervousness before the importance of that moment. While waiting for the appointed time, he realized that not even healing magic would be able to relieve the anxiety he felt before walking up to the altar. Hand in hand, the protagonist and Lola finally entered the ceremony hall under the warm applause of the guests. Received with smiles and celebration, the two walked to the altar radiant with happiness, marking the official beginning of their wedding before everyone who had gathered to celebrate that special moment. When the ceremony was about to begin, a renowned marshal stepped up to the altar to represent the retired general and conduct the opening speech. However, his imposing presence completely surprised the protagonist, who became visibly apprehensive upon seeing him take charge of the ceremony and began wondering what was about to happen. Before officially starting the ceremony, the marshal gave a speech in honor of the bride and groom and introduced the protagonist to everyone present. Before the kingdom's elite, he highlighted his greatest achievements, recalling that he had revolutionized several fields with his inventions, developed modular artificial beasts, and created an innovative transportation system, making it clear that his influence had already profoundly transformed the kingdom. The marshal continued praising the protagonist's achievements, reminding everyone that, although he was still a student, he had already become a brilliant researcher, responsible for extraordinary accomplishments that remained secret to protect his safety. Faced with so many merits, he declared that there was no more appropriate occasion than that day for the kingdom to officially recognize his value, leading everyone present to applaud and support the tribute. As recognition for his extraordinary contributions to the kingdom, the protagonist was called to the stage to receive one of the country's highest honors, including the prestigious Eagle Medal with swords and the Diamond Medal. Under the applause of everyone present, he officially received the decorations, while Lola watched the ceremony with a smile full of pride for his achievements. After receiving the decorations, the protagonist joked with Lola for not warning him about the surprise prepared by the marshal. While the two talked about the recognition and the impact his achievements had on the city's prestige, a doctor approached to greet him and congratulate him on the wedding, beginning a new conversation during the celebration. During the reception, the protagonist met a doctor and his wife, who congratulated him on the wedding while commenting on his excellent recovery and good health. The conversation continued in a relaxed way, moving from the drink he had created to compliments about his wife until other guests approached to greet him. Amid jokes, they pointed out that he had managed to get married and receive important decorations on the same day, making the celebration even more memorable. During the reception, Lola reunited with an old rival, a woman who remained confident and provocative even after losing part of her power. The two exchanged friendly provocations, remembering the past and showing that, despite their rivalry, they still held great respect for each other, turning the reunion into one of the most memorable moments of the celebration. Lola revealed to her old rival that she had recovered her magic through a completely unexpected method, leaving the other woman surprised when she finally understood what had happened. After that brief conversation, the rival commented that she still intended to fulfill the promise of facing her again in the future, but decided to postpone the duel until she returned to the army, ending the reunion in a respectful and competitive tone. During the reception, Lola's old rival insisted that she return to the battlefield, believing that someone so talented should not abandon military life. However, Lola firmly refused the proposal once again, making it clear that her decision was final and that she had found a new path alongside the protagonist, surprising everyone with her determination. The protagonist declared that he would protect Lola and stated that she would never return to the battlefield. Moved by his words, she decided to make one last request to her husband. Lola asked the protagonist to promise that he would never let her return to the battlefield. Without hesitation, he accepted her request and swore to protect her from then on. Upon hearing that the protagonist had never taken a life and only intended to protect others with his inventions and healing magic, Lola's old rival accepted his answer and concluded that, from then on, he would be responsible for protecting the woman who had once fought on the battlefield. When challenging the protagonist's determination, Lola's old rival released her powerful aura to intimidate him. Even frightened, he remained firm before her, determined to fulfill his promise to protect his wife. When the situation seemed about to get out of control, one of the guests intervened to protect the protagonist and made it clear that he would never allow anyone to touch his benefactor, interrupting the confrontation before it escalated further. Taken by anger, the woman began insulting all the veterans who had lost their magic organs, calling them failures who had fled the battlefield. Even before the provocations and pressure, the protagonist remained firm, without backing down. Showing no intention of retreating, the woman challenged everyone present to face her at the same time. While she released more and more power and continued provoking the veterans, the protagonist watched the situation with tension, realizing that the confrontation was about to explode. Before the confrontation got out of control, a veteran imposed his authority and silenced everyone present. With order restored, he reminded them that it was a day of celebration and demanded that everyone end the confusion. After the confusion was ended, Lola praised the protagonist's courage for protecting her, while he tried to hide how shaken he had been. Then, the ceremony continued, reaching the most awaited moment, the kiss between the newlyweds. Before all the guests, the protagonist swore to protect Lola for the rest of his life and promised never to disappoint her. Happy with those words, she accepted his commitment, officially marking the beginning of their life as husband and wife. After sealing his marriage with a kiss, the protagonist decided to live his new life in that world to the fullest and promised to forever protect Lola and all the people who had become important to him. After the wedding, the protagonist and Lola officially began their new life together, with him moving into his wife's house and beginning this new phase as a couple. Upon arriving at the new residence, the protagonist was warmly welcomed by the mansion's staff. Although a little nervous about the reception, he thanked everyone and began living in his new home alongside Lola. Even though he already knew the mansion, the protagonist was impressed when he realized that place was now his home. Despite his happiness, he could not hide his nervousness when remembering that, from that day on, he and Lola were officially married. While getting to know his new home better, the protagonist reflected on the change in his life. Now married and living as a noble, he realized that he would need to adapt to that new reality and leave behind the habits of his old life. While adapting to the new routine, the protagonist commented that he still needed to balance married life with his studies and research. However, Lola made it clear that she wanted to live by his side without giving up that new phase together. Lola insisted that she only wanted to continue that new life if she could stay by the protagonist's side. Charmed by his wife's reaction, he ended up giving in, and shortly afterward returned to his work routine alongside his companions. When visiting his companions, the protagonist found the team overloaded with a large amount of documents. Realizing the difficulty of solving everything within the deadline, he listened to their request for help and decided to closely follow the situation. Even before the team's problems, the protagonist minimized the situation and offered to help. Seeing his willingness and calmness, everyone was surprised by his reaction. To help his companions, the protagonist presented new models of artificial beasts he had created. Despite the enthusiasm, the others received the demonstration with suspicion and became worried about serving as test subjects for the experiments. Following the protagonist's instructions, each person chose an egg and inserted a magic crystal inside it. Shortly afterward, the eggs began to hatch, revealing small, artificial beasts with different appearances. The protagonist explained that he only wanted his companions to raise and observe the new artificial beasts. However, one of the models developed its own consciousness and began acting unexpectedly, leaving everyone completely surprised. The protagonist explained that those artificial beasts would serve to research the development of consciousness. Besides being able to receive names, be trained, and be fed with magic crystals, they began to be raised and cared for by the entire team. The protagonist organized the research on the artificial beasts, asked everyone to record weekly reports, and explained that, for now, the focus would be to study the development of those creatures' consciousness before thinking about commercializing them. Already settled in the mansion, the protagonist began adapting to the new routine alongside Lola. While sharing a meal and talking calmly, the two enjoyed the first moments of married life to strengthen their relationship even further. During lunch, the protagonist commented on how much he appreciated the food of that world and remembered that his previous life had been very different. Taking advantage of the conversation, Lola showed interest in learning more about his past. While talking about foods from his world, the protagonist mentioned some dishes he missed. Interested, Lola suggested that the two try to recreate them together. After deciding to recreate dishes from his world, the protagonist went out to look for the ingredients. When he returned, he met Lola's father and realized that she had gone to visit him, taking the opportunity to ask him to examine his father-in-law's health. While gathering ingredients to prepare recipes from his old world, the protagonist discovered a rare mushroom and began considering cultivating it, seeing there a new opportunity for the future. Excited by the idea, everyone promised to help and buy the production if the cultivation worked. Then, the protagonist gathered the ingredients and his team to start preparing a new recipe inspired by his world. The protagonist gathered all the ingredients and began teaching his team how to prepare ramen inspired by his world. While each person took on a task, Lola carefully recorded the recipe so it could be reproduced in the future. While adjusting the recipe, the protagonist tested different combinations of seasonings until he found the one that most closely resembled the original flavor of the ramen from his old world. After tasting the different versions of the broth, the group chose the best combination and suggested small adjustments to the recipe. With everyone's approval, they moved on to the final stage of preparing the ramen. Following the protagonist's instructions, the team finished preparing the ramen, cooling the noodles, and assembling the dish. With everything ready, the new recipe was finally completed. Upon tasting the final dish, the protagonist realized that he had successfully recreated the flavor he had missed so much. Moved by nostalgia, he celebrated finally being able to prepare the udon from his old world. After tasting the udon, everyone praised the result and commented that the dish was light, refreshing, and ideal for hot days. While discussing small adjustments to perfect the recipe, some members became curious about the ice cubes used in the preparation, leading the protagonist to explain their function in the dish. While walking with Lola, the protagonist explained that the use of ice in that world was still uncommon because refrigerators did not exist, which made that dish even more special. Excited by the result, he believed that somen could become a great novelty, gain popularity, and be sold at food stalls as a new local specialty. After the meal, the protagonist corrected Lola, explaining that the dish they had prepared was udon and promised to teach her the difference between the recipes later. Then, he said goodbye to handle some matters at the company headquarters, while Lola, enchanted by life beside him, commented that there was never a boring moment when they were together, leaving the protagonist even more excited. Upon arriving at the construction site of the new theater, the protagonist found everyone worried after yet another commotion caused by one of the team's employees. Taking advantage of the situation, he revealed that he had already begun cultivating shiitake mushrooms, a rare ingredient, using magic to accelerate their growth and expand production, just as he had done with other projects. The mushroom cultivation was a success and produced an amount far beyond expectations. Realizing that this could even affect the market, the protagonist decided to adjust his magic in the next plantings and organize the team to begin harvesting the enormous production. With the arrival of summer, the protagonist felt the intense heat and invited Lola to go to a pool together. Excited by the idea of enjoying the day by his side, she accepted the invitation, beginning a moment of rest after so many days of work.